Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to the show.
You learn in life can't help you when you're old. She's got the cushion for the pushing of the love so true. When she's talking to me, I know she's looking at you. She says there is no other, no need to question why. She's always on the phone to another guy. This is gonna hurt a little bit. This is gonna hurt a little bit. God's on the line and my life's on hold. Don't believe what people say, 'cause their lives are all the same. God's on the line and my life's on hold. When you think that something's up, better watch out for the train.
Hoffman with Political Gravity. Don's on hold, and Ben might call in and maybe wait in a half hour after his parents' birthday party. Tonight we're going to cover some major topics. I am going to implement Joseph Nye's complex interdependence theory on Benghazi and a more minor Russian case. The model of complex interdependence was developed by Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye in the 70s. it really was a major challenge to fundamental assumptions of traditional and structural realism, which says that countries only fight in defense of themselves. Realism focuses on military and economic capabilities to explain state behavior. Complex interdependence relies on the emergence of a transnational actors vis-à-vis the state. I'll get into that in a minute. Its focus was the rise of international regimes. As you know, let me discuss that you could say transactional actors. You don't have to say transnational actors. Now, Ben challenged me this morning when I had gotten into a conflict with John earlier this morning. One thing that conservatives do is they keep bringing up old issues of Benghazi. So I did investigate Benghazi. Now, the complex interdependence theory I'm talking about, it became a central component of the neoliberal perspective that had been widely used in international politics. Now, the reason I'm applying these mitigating circumstances of anarchy and dependence is when Benghazi happened, there were 3 or 4 elements that took place that made it a recipe for disaster at the beginning. And yes, I do somewhat resent the fact that Hilary Clinton single-handedly was blamed, and I'll tell you why. Muammar Gaddafi had already been ousted. There was a stockpile of his weapons distributed all over the country. That means his weapons from his former regimes were in all kinds of hands of different terrorists. And Christopher Stevens, the ambassador to Libya, had just met with a Turkish official the morning of the Benghazi attack at the consulate at a perfectly peaceful meeting. Also, there was a video released in America degrading Mohammed, and Abu Khatala was one of the leaders that circulated the anger about that video. And there was a subsequent attack in Cairo, Egypt, on an American embassy. And some of the people who were going to attack the Benghazi consulate were kind of doing a copycat crime. Now, the reason I say that you can tie this incident into Joseph Nye's complex interdependence theory is because Christopher Stevens was stationed at the consulate with another guy named Sean Smith, and they had little or no protection. But the CIA Annex, which was a mile away, had military contractors, 3 of them who had already served in the military, gotten out, and they were private contractors to protect the CIA doing dirty work in the city of Benghazi and in the state of Libya. Now, a lot of the CIA work was underhanded. They were snooping on these terrorist groups to see their effectiveness. And there was not a lot of coordination. So when you think about it, there's the legitimate American government at the consulate. There's the CIA Annex who has their own private security protecting them, doing dirty work. And then there's Gregory Hicks, the embassy leader in Tripoli, that doesn't know shit about what's about to go down in Benghazi. And there was some relatively peaceful protests around Libya regarding that anti-Mohammed video, but there was a lot of conflicting, contradictory information circulating around between the 3 subsidiary branches of the government. Now, Michael Morrell, the CIA deputy director, didn't even know about the protest till 3 days after the Benghazi attack. And the CIA analysis, they didn't even get access to eyewitness accounts, which they could compare to what mainstream news was saying till September 22nd. And in the end, 3 of the special private contractors save the lives of 30 people at the CIA Annex. That's why, personally, I never made a big deal of it, because only 4 people died in a hostile country in which a government that had been in existence for over 30 years was taken down, and I didn't consider it a mitigating disaster. But when you look at Joseph Nye's complex interdependence theory, there's all these factors at stake, and there's no coordination between Tripoli, the CIA Annex, and the American consulate in Benghazi, and that's why I think it was a failure. With that, I'm going to bring Albert and Don in. First, I'll say hi to Don. He's been on hold 8 minutes, and then I'll pull in Albert, who's been on hold 5 minutes. One moment while I pull them in. Okay, Don and Albert, you're in the house. So what I was trying to convey is Ben was trying to pick a bone with me. Ben was picking a bone with me today, we were talking about investigations. He still thinks that Hilary and a couple other people should be convicted for what happened in Benghazi. I disagree, because I told him I would fully investigate it. And as far as I'm concerned, I do not feel that the Secretary of State office was responsible. I think there was miscommunication.
There's 1,000 things to convict Hillary Clinton for. Haiti, what happened in Haiti's over there, and also, Benghazi, and then you got the emails. The list just keeps on going for Hillary Clinton, but,
Yeah, but
she'll never face jail time. I mean, she was too powerful.
You're forgetting the big one. Those aren't even the big one. The big one, Haiti was a disgrace, but the big one is Clinton Gate down there in Arkansas. They took.
You mean Whitewater?
Whitewater, and Clinton, same thing.
Well, I don't want to change the topic yet. I want you guys to comment on what I said.
Well,
I want you guys to comment on what I said about the CIA. Like, for example, Congress did ask for more security at the consulate, but the CIA Annex, it was only a short distance away, a mile, and it was only protected by private contractors.
That's because
it wasn't really their job to protect the consulate, but they volunteered, and they were told to stand down, but they went to go help Chris Stevens anyway. And by the time they got there, he was bombed and smoked out in a private security room that was designed for attacks like that. By the way, Ben's on the line too, so I'm going to bring him in. Hold on. So before, Albert, I don't mind you bringing up those other topics, but I spent a good hour researching this, so I want to start on this topic, which is Benghazi.
And remember, Stevens was the one who told the CIA to stand down.
No, it wasn't him technically. It was the military commanders through the CIA that were communicating between the CIA Annex and the American consulate. Stevens had called Tripoli, all the way in North Libya. They called Gregory Hicks saying, I need help, damn it. Come down and help me. Here, I'm going to pull Ben in because I'm sure he knows. Yeah, so the CIA Annex were not involved, but Ben, are you on the line?
Yep, I'm here. How's it going?
But after Stevens became desperate, and because the CIA Annex was within proximity, they came and helped anyway, even though at that time they were retired from the military and they were just private contractors. Hi, Ben. I was telling Albert and Don, I was applying Joseph Nye's complex interdependence theory to the Benghazi attack, saying that the coordinated efforts to protect them during that crisis, it wasn't just Hillary's fault, it was a breach in communication between the branches of government.
Right, and the thing is, though, to keep in mind is that the main problem was that the president, Hilary, Panetta, and a couple other people, I'm not even sure if Holder...
Susan Rice was the head ambassador at the time.
But these people were all in the strategy room looking at this as it was going down from the drone and everything. So they saw a clear view, and they
not necessarily. The article I read, Barack Obama didn't really know what happened until the next day.
Well, these people, they were sitting. Biden, I believe, was there too.
They were watching. They were watching, and there wasn't a communication breakdown. Ambassador Stevens had been asking for help for a month, and he'd been warning them over emails.
There was a congressional aide that had asked on one of the military committees who had asked for more. Christopher Stevens, they had been tracking his jogging routes around the Libyan compound, and he stopped jogging after a while because he realized he was he was being targeted.
Right. That's probably true.
Ben, I do think there was a breach in communication because the CIA Annex was doing their own thing, spying on local terrorist groups, and
so they would have known who was going to attack.
Well, there was misinformation in the CIA reports. They claim that what spawned the attack on the consulate was protests that happened in Cairo that filtered over into Libya about a video mocking Muhammad. Right. And there weren't really any strong protests. It was an independent operation the CIA determined.
Well, that's why it is almost jailable, because they organized the lie. That lie was pretty much organized by whomever was in that bunker looking at that drone tape telecast. That's part of the problem, is that there was a complete lie that was generated at first about the attack, about the reasons for the attack. Yeah. So, this is something that
well, the CIA didn't get it straight for 10 days. They didn't even get eyewitness accounts till the 22nd.
They were covering it up because their doggone operation was probably supposed to be something else, and it was a lie. The reason they were there in the first place. I'm not sure about that part, but it's probably why the CIA, I keep telling people that if you notice, and we can talk about this later, the Las Vegas shooting, the reason for that was to cover up on the attempted assassination of the Saudi prince, but it was there at the same time. But they have now closed that investigation, and it's something what you said earlier, or Albert, that she will never get jail time, is true, because they've essentially closed the case.
Well, the investigation wasn't done properly. All the information was skewed. They didn't even.
I would
finish.
say it was done thoroughly, though, because it was done by 3 different agencies.
There has not been an investigation since I'm alive that has been done properly. These white leaders are just trash, because there has never been since Martin Luther King's wiretaps and all those things that didn't come out later, JFK's murder, now it's coming out, probably CIA, or, they're still saying whether it's the mob, but CIA is all possibly integral in it. And, none of these, I haven't seen...
Well, it's because these agencies are above our legal system. All these agencies are above our law, like the FBI and the CIA. Look at John Brennan's history.
Right.
There was a whistleblower that worked for the FBI that was trying to blow the whistle on John Brennan for going back and manipulating Obama's passport history. FBI agent that was going to turn on him and talk, and he was murdered in front of his church in his car the night he was supposed to meet with FBI.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I would like Albert to talk too, but
really,
I have a general question for you,
bad.
Ben. Based on Joseph Nye's complex interdependence theory, there's more things at work than just the government in these foreign countries. For example, if the CIA is hiring private contractors, a.k.a. hitmen, to protect them while they do dirty work, what's the difference between that and Russia going privately into Central Africa to trade military arms so they can mine minerals in Central Africa, and then 3 Russian journalists going there to investigate turn out dead? What's the difference?
What is the difference? What are we supposed to do about it? That's a different country. This one's our country.
I'm just saying there's a lot of things at work. We had already taken out Gaddafi. There was a loose confederation of weapons stockpile everywhere that not only the Americans, when we overturned Gaddafi, his weapons supply got raided by terrorists. And they were in the hands of many terrorists all over Benghazi, Tripoli, and God knows where. The situation was already a recipe for. It was a recipe for disaster. Maybe Christopher Stevens shouldn't even have been in there at that particular time. He only arrived on September 10th, and he was killed by the 11th.
Yeah. Well, he was only there one day. Are you sure?
Yeah, I watched 3 documentaries plus read 3 reports in valid newspapers. What happened was Hilary told him to go over there and find out how he could work with the rebels so that the most legitimate rebel group could establish a new government. And he got there on the 10th, and on the morning of the 11th, he met with a Turkish official in a consulate, and it was a pretty peaceful day. Nobody suspected anything. That's why the conflicting reports that there were protests about the Muhammad video were wrong. It was an intentional assault that started at 9:42 p.m. at the consulate, and one of the military guys who was protecting the Annex warned Stevens that he didn't have enough protection.
So it's just another mysterious death surrounding Hillary Clinton.
No, it isn't, because there were over 200 men with, I think they said RK-47s or something like that, and Christopher Stevens and Sean Smith went down into the gallows of this private room where no one could touch them. But what they ended up doing is letting off some kind of smoke bomb where they couldn't breathe, and Stevens ended up dying of smoke inhalation. He didn't die of a bullet wound. You can't say it was a Clinton hit in a country like Libya, for God's sakes.
Well, she knew more than she let on. Like, why did they even decide to take...
How do you know that, technically?
Because she played the game about the video. That wasn't true. She lied about it. Why would you lie about something?
You mean about the Mohammed video that pissed people off?
Yeah, she was saying that it was a protest caused by a video. That was BS, and everybody knew it.
Well, maybe that's what she thought in the beginning. I don't know if she retracted it. And I'm not here to defend her. I'm just saying that I don't think, you know what, it was a tragedy that happened, and the reason I never looked into it further, and this sounds shallow, but only 4 people died. That's a low number for that type of attack.
Yeah, but if you look into it, there was help that was turned away. Why?
But the CIA was the ones who told them to stand down, and it was the private military contractors that disobeyed the CIA and drove over to the consulate to help Stevens anyway. But they got there too late. It wasn't fixable at that point.
Well, like Don said, though, the Obama and Hillary and all of them were were listening and watching it all go down. They could have asked for help. They could have authorized help to come from anywhere. I think there was help waiting in Italy, wasn't there?
I know that some of the peaceful citizens of Libya tried to save Chris Stevens, and they were unsuccessful.
Right.
Did you guys know there was a movie made about it called 13 Hours? And they used 4 of the surviving military contractors as consultants, including the guy whose arm got mutilated in one of the roof attacks at the CIA Annex.
Yeah, I watched that movie.
Yeah, so what did you learn from that?
Well, they left out a lot of information. It was an action movie, and it showed a lot of the tension, but they didn't talk about the weapons or the gold or Gaddafi or any of that.
I heard that they intentionally left Hillary Clinton's name out, and also the CIA was really pissed because it made them look bad.
They left Hillary Clinton's name out because it was during the election year.
I guess they were smart.
It was pretty much her fault. Everybody thought she was going to win. Everyone thought Hillary was going to win the election. That's why this whole Russia investigation went so far, because
I didn't think she was going to win. I knew that she had enough dirt on her to have anybody.
Do we have to segue into a Hillary bashing contest?
Benghazi is Hillary. They're the same thing in terms of probably about 70% of the population. Now, nobody knows.
Then why did Nixon win re-election when he bombed the living shit out of Cambodia and melted the flesh off of people?
Because he bombed the living shit out of Cambodia actively. This is something Hillary lost control. She no longer was a good Secretary of State when it found out that she has no control over her own ambassadors and diplomats and her own security forces. When your Secretary of State looking for a presidency loses control, that is a completely different thing than a president going over and bombing, throwing some bombs on Syria or throwing some bombs on Libya, or that's a different situation. Throwing a bomb here or there over on North Korea. Those are different situations. And if
you guys were, I'm going to say this without trying to cause insult, but you don't have to politicize everything. Why can't you just look at it as an isolated tragedy?
It's not isolated. All of her tragedies are connected.
Or you could say that America brought it on themselves because we took the risk of removing Gaddafi, and then it created a bunch of splinter groups which turned on us.
Right, and that's because there is that white entitlement. They think they can do any damn thing they want.
No, it has nothing to do with being white. It has to do with being corrupt. And Obama was part of it, too. It's not because he's half white that he's corrupt.
Sure it is. That's
no, it's not.
Okay, Don, that's
only
a pat
racist would
answer.
say that.
Why don't we hear from Albert quick?
Go ahead, Albert. When you get caught up in things, then that you can't control. He's the president
Wade's
of the
on
United
the line.
States, and he does not have an opportunity to control his environment after 3 years in office, and Mitch McConnell coming out and saying that we will never work with this president. It's the first day in office. When you say something like that, then it kind of deflates your sails on hope and dreams, and you become engrossed in revenge and despair and ultimately a little bit of hatred. And that's what happened to Obama. He saved America in the worst way possible by printing goo gobs of money that we still have in reserve, and we have to roll out gently or else inflation is going to kill us. But that is the only way.
Wait, you can stay on mute a few minutes if you want.
But he had to save America, and he did. And
no, Obama didn't save America. He did everything in his power to destroy America.
He printed more money.
Then that's kind of a jaded statement.
He printed
no, it's an educated statement. He was a Marxist with ties to terrorism.
Yes.
He was corrupt from the beginning, and he came out of nowhere, and he was put in office, groomed by evil leaders.
No,
I don't care about
well, that's your opinion, but Bernie Sanders' financial advisor was on Fareed Zakaria today explaining how under his plan everybody else would be entitled to a job. So you can't call Bernie Sanders evil just because he's a Marxist.
Bernie Sanders is no, he's stupid if he thinks socialism is the way to go.
Okay, can we get back on point, guys? I have one more point to make to Ben, and then we're going to segue into Russia or another topic. The fact of the matter is that Libya was already from a political science perspective, Libya was already fragmented. They had an excess of military arms in the street. America was a natural target not just because of the release of the video, but just because of Middle Eastern dissent and hatred for America. And the fact of the matter was Benghazi happened. It wasn't one person's fault like Hilary. I blame equally the CIA and the State Department and the communication. And that's my final thought. You guys can add to it if you want.
White privilege is killing democracy.
We are not a democracy in the first place.
A republic, then.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, democracy is,
white privilege
let Albert say something.
Well, yeah, democracy is when the government do what the people want. But the government does not do what the people want. They do war, proxy wars. People don't want proxy wars, but they do it anyways. People don't want freaking like 80 or 90 or 60% of our taxes to go into the military. People don't want their taxes to go there. Most people don't, but they do it anyway. So it's not really a democracy.
The thing you need to understand about a democracy is that democracy is majority. So if you're a minority, you're always getting screwed in a democracy. I hear Democrats constantly use that key word, democracy, our democracy, blah, blah, blah. We're not a democracy. Because as soon as you're a part of the minority in a democracy, you're getting oppressed. That's why we're a republic that has a constitution to protect the individual. That means democracy has no power over an individual's rights. Doesn't matter if you're the minority. It doesn't matter. You have inalienable rights.
But it does protect the minority faction, and we've had at least 5 shows on that.
No, democracy doesn't.
Yes, it does. That's why stuff like the gay bakery thing went all the way to the Supreme Court, because they wanted to determine if right-wing Christians had to bake cakes for gays.
Well, that's a republic, though. I think, I see the point, is that if in a pure democracy, it's like, there's the classic example of 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner, right? I mean, whoever has the majority can dictate what they want, right? But we have an idea of like there's principles and there's policies and procedures to protect the minorities.
Right. And that's what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights
doesn't always mean ethnic minority. It could mean minority and people that want to do things a little different, or people that want a different lifestyle, right?
Well, you guys can continue to interject those different principles, but I want to keep moving the show in the direction of the topic.
Sure.
I want you to do a comparative analysis to the small handful of men who died in Benghazi I want to ask you a intellectual question, okay? Alexander Rastag, okay, these damn Russian names. Alexander Rastoguev, Kirill Radchenko, and Orkan Desmal were all killed in a remote area near about 186 miles north of Sabut, in a city called Sabut, north of the capital of Bangui, in Central Africa Republic. That's the new name. It used to be something else. The investigators spent 2 days examining the bodies, and they'll return them to the families. The investigators were there. They were trying to analyze a paramilitary organization that had links to the Kremlin, and Vladimir Putin indeed had given the Central African Republic military training and weapons in exchange for mining some of their minerals. And the trip by these 3 journalists was paid by a guy in exile named Mikhail Khodorkovsky, which you've probably heard of. It's Khodorkovsky, a longtime Putin foe who spent years in prison. So he was working on a documentary and a project called Russian Mercenaries. Now my question is, Christopher Stevens had the right to be in Benghazi because he was an ambassador, but should journalists go into dangerous countries unprotected at night to do investigations through a nonprofit to just end up dead?
What do you mean, should they? That's a risk that every journalist takes going into a war zone.
Yeah.
Well, these 3 men had been in other major wars in dangerous areas before. They weren't naive.
Now, Jane, you know that we were worked in the journalism field, still do in some cases. And I, as a reporter, when I did reporting, would go anywhere for a story. And that included, gunshot, bombs in the area, whatever. I would go. Is that Albert? Anyway.
I think it might be Wade at his birthday party.
Oh, anyway.
No, I'm back home.
Oh, you are? Wade, did you fly to Arizona for that?
No, I'll tell you. I can tell you later, but no, it was someone else.
Tell me later. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Don.
No, I pretty much said what I was going to say, but because we would go in anywhere for a story. So a journalist going under the guise of a nonprofit in the dead of night for a potential story is normal. That's part of their job description, and you can see that they took it seriously, and they went and did it, and death was, is around any corner.
Okay, let me mention one more fact that might make it a little more objective. The men were in the country to investigate the activities of Wagner, a shadowy Russian private military firm, said a Russian news outlet for the Center for Investigative Management. The firm the journalists were investigating, called Wagner, is led by Dmitry Yutkin, a former colonel in the Russia Special Forces who is under U.S. sanctions for assisting pro-Russian separatists in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. My question is how many paramilitary organizations are conducted by first world countries and countries that we don't even know about? Like, how many sneaky Halliburtons are happening and that are under the thumb of government?
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I even think, I have a question for Wade and Albert. Do you think it's fair that someone serves in the U.S. military 4 to 8 years, they retire, and then they get hired by private contractors to do some kind of dirty work in a foreign country. Do you think that's compromising people of their own integrity?
Well, it depends on what we mean by dirty work. I think that it'd be in the details. Of course, it's bad if anybody does anything immoral. But dirty work is in something ugly that needs to be done.
Well,
I don't know.
I think in many cases it's for economic advantage, like going around government laws. Albert, what do you think? And are you at your mother's tonight?
Yeah, I'm basically cooking for my mom.
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise. Do you mind if we mute you a minute?
I actually just finished right now. I'm like free right now. Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear the chopping block. Hopefully that's not Michael Pence's head.
Right.
Okay, you guys, I'm reaching tonight. I'm reaching. Can someone
private military contractors? There's in itself, it's not an evil career. It's what you're trained to do anyway. And why would you take formal training, military training, and then be satisfied with one set amount of money when you could triple it to go do the same work that you've been doing with less restriction on you? That's what Eric Prince started. He started Blackwater, and they worked all around the world, and they did the work of governments with less restriction. But when they pointed the finger at Eric Prince and they tried to get him in trouble for doing things that he was hired to do, that's when there's a problem. The government can't tell a private contractor what to do and then try to pin them with a problem.
Well, in the case of Benghazi, the private contractors helped the American government at the consulate. They disobeyed the CIA and left their posts. Now, in other situations, when Bush 43 was in office, I used to know some people who flew over to Saudi Arabia for private work back when I was a Navy wife in Norfolk, and they got paid buku bucks, sometimes directly by the Saudi government themselves.
Yeah, it makes sense that they'd want that. Yeah, it depends on what they're doing.
And,
I know, and I can't really speculate at this point because I don't have a scenario.
Sure.
The problem that our military was running into was the restrictions, like all the restrictions of the wartime, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. You can go here, you can't shoot back, you can't go into this zone or that zone, even to help your own people. But all of our vehicles had the contact information for Blackwater. So if they had to rescue somebody, but they weren't allowed to go to that place, they could call Blackwater because those guys are contractors and they aren't under the restrictions that the active military are under. So they could call Blackwater and have them go rescue somebody in a no-go zone.
And they probably have better equipment.
Yeah. And, any kind of military force, I mean, it's made up of people. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Oath Keepers, which I think is a really interesting thing, where these are military trained guys that, together they have this idea that they follow principle above orders. So, they won't turn on their own citizens. They won't. There's a list of things that they say that, they won't do even if they're ordered to. The government law is not the ultimate authority on right and wrong, and I think it's good if private military, if they're told to do something wrong or they're told not to rescue someone, if they do disobey and go by a higher sense of morality, that's not necessarily a bad thing to me.
Yeah, well, the Nineveh Plains Project was a coalition of international Christians that were trying to stop ISIS, and they weren't affiliated with the government.
Well, Blackwater essentially got shut down because they got in pretty big trouble for retaliation. because one of their guys was killed and displayed, and I think they burned somebody, and it was basically one of their brothers, and they displayed him in the town. And Blackwater, of course that pissed them off. They went in there and retaliated like crazy, but they got in trouble for it. But they did send a message back. I mean, the entire display of their brothers, that was a message sent to Blackwater. Blackwater came in there 10 times harder and retaliated. But then our government tried to get them in trouble for it.
Yeah, it can be ridiculous. Well, that's what my father said was the problem with he flew in for Vietnam, and he said that that's why we lost, is because that's what look, they're building bombers over there. Well, no, we can't. We have to be nice. We can't blow it up now. And then a month later, okay, now they have bombers and they're killing our guys. So it can be kind of ridiculous. I hear the way we just try to play nice and keep the gloves on and stuff when it's like, okay, this is war, we need to win.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that get our guys killed. Like, you can't fire an RPG unless you make a phone call. You have to basically get blown up before you're authorized to shoot back.
How do you know
What about the value of our lives? Go on.
How do I know that?
Yeah.
A friend of mine that served in Iraq told me all about it. He said they had to make a phone call before they could shoot back once they were shot at, but they had to ask to use anything besides their rifles.
John Yoder's only on a 15-minute break, and he called in, so I'll give him a quick rundown. Hi, John. We're talking about private military contractors in countries that assist sometimes the military, but also citizens and other groups, and we're determining their position there versus legitimate countries that bring their own military, so to speak.
Wow. Well, I know just from history, basically, if you're not willing to live, settle, take over, and marry a few people and have some babies, you're going to get kicked out of the country. America is where we decided to settle, but everywhere else countries go, whether it's China, Russia, Italy, Spain, you look at the history of all those countries, eventually the people indigenous to the land will take it over and beat you out. So, you kind of have to figure your war strategy. How are you going to get in? How are you going to get out? Usually it's better to supply the people or the rebels or the guerrillas or whoever and let them take care of their own business, from what I can see historically.
Well, that's what Christopher Stevens was doing before he got iced. He was trying to determine which rebel group was best suited to run Libya after Gaddafi died.
Yeah, we saw how that happened when we took out Gaddafi. It's just you get rid of the devil and you get the devil you don't know. Is the problem.
That's right.
That is true.
So, are you trying to say, John, that if you made babies with a Filipino, a Native American woman, an Italian, and an Irish, that you'd be more secure in California?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people during the day will ask me if I'm Persian, because there's a lot of Persian Jews that shop at the store that I work, the anonymous store that I work. And so, and I always say, oh, no, actually, and they try to guess, maybe I'm Jewish, maybe I'm Italian, or whatever. And then I tell them I'm, German, Mexican. And usually I'll joke back, I want to marry a Persian woman. And this one Persian woman looked straight at me and said, very seriously, she said, she will kill you if she's truly, Muslim and Persian. And
well, there's a lot of Christian Persians.
Oh, yes. It's true. Well, but, it's a minority. But I have to say tonight, I am thankful that I think America, our military is stronger than before. Our economy is stronger than before. We're getting an administration that supports traditional family and moral values. So I'm thanking God to be in America, and that Donald Trump is trying to make America great again. I'm wondering if I can get a hug from anyone on the panel.
Your public service announcement can only last 45 seconds before I nix it.
Awesome.
And if you want a traditional family, why don't you make some babies? Now I have a question to pose. I do have something disturbing to tell you guys. It might be a little lighthearted. I'm watching this teenage drama on Netflix, and the town is divided by evil, and one of the fathers of the most squeaky clean family turns out to be a serial killer, but they have to represent homosexuals and lesbians. So two of the people, the sheriff's son is gay, and the owner of the maple syrup factory's daughter is a lesbian. It's almost like they're trying to cram so many social topics into one series that it diminishes the whole essence of who's the good characters and who's the bad characters.
That's current Hollywood. It has to be politically correct. Like if you know shows such as Gotham, the Penguin is gay. He's trying to get it on with the Joker or the Riddler, Penguin and Riddler. They're trying to work a gay angle. All the female characters, Tabby as well as Barbara, they're lesbian, or they kind of cross the middle of the road. Most of your action superhero movies coming out, they'll be female empowered. I was just driving by bicycling by a sign that said the spy that dumped me. It's two women on a motorcycle, running through town. I mean, that's going to be the theme, woman power, and that's good. That's fine. Actually, I'm in support of people being, gay or transgender or whatever they want to be. But the issue comes in, though, is when everyone wants to legalize and then force straight people to pay for their operations, force their children to be taught that they can, empower themselves and get basically transition before they're 18 without the parents, powerless to stop that decision. So that's kind of the issue I think we're running into with this stuff. You'll see more of it, though, in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't mind. I'm happy to see a variety of characters in movies. Where I think it goes too far is when you get people saying like, "How dare they? There was no gay character, or there was no this or that, or there was too many white characters." That's when I get irritated. Like, okay, you know what? Just then make your film that has these other. Don't bitch about what that person. You're not happy that they didn't represent this or that. That's the story they wanted to tell. Leave them alone.
Especially if you see with, like, say, I'd take something as simple as Marvel Empire, like Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., he was white. I remember when they had the Wild Wild West, Will Smith was black. His character wasn't. It's kind of like, are we going to make like a special on Martin Luther King and make him Chinese? Just to please, ethnic diversity. Like, you don't have to force it sometimes. I think just let it happen. If blacks are 18% of the population, you don't have to make the cast 50. I'm talking about commercials. I'll watch commercials like we got to have, a Latin and Hispanic, a minority person of color. You can't just have % white or 80%.
Well, at Riverdale, all the on the east side of town, all the popular people are white, but the mayor is black. It's Robin Givens, Mike Tyson's ex-wife, and then the girl who plays Josie for Josie and the Pussycats is black, and then there's a Serpent gang member who's a female Latino. But then it's confusing because the Serpents seem to be half Mexican, half Native, and they don't make a clear definition in the storyline.
just
but
keep
all
the films
killers
good.
are white.
Yeah.
All the people who do the killing are white.
But you still have that stereotype. Yeah, keep the stories good, and that's what I care. Because Samuel L. Jackson is cool as Nick Fury. I don't, I'm fine with that. And Will Smith was a good, and I was a fan of the old TV show, and I liked Will Smith. I liked the movie too. So I'm fine. I don't like.
You mean?
But then like with Star Wars, it's like Rey. And there's been a long history of great female characters going back into the 30s. Rey in the new Star Wars films is just a badly written, boring character. It's not because she's a woman. It's just make them good characters. That's all I care about. Make good characters.
Well,
make good stories.
The reason I brought this up, Wade, is not because of color, but the construct of Riverdale, if some of you guys are old enough to remember the Archie comics, it was Betty, Veronica, Archie, and Jughead. Well, they took that premise, they made the town of Riverdale with a chocolate shop, and there's one major gang, and then there's another gang called the Ghoulies. It's almost like the 1950s meets South Central LA, and they have too many villains. And each person is divided with their own soul as part evil and part good, and there's no clear definition about who's good or bad. And in the first season, the father of the maple syrup business kills his own son because he's angry he won't take over the business. So it's just too dark, Like, so even if they make the characters, the plot sucks. And I'm going to write about it on Reddit.
Sure, I remember Archie was lighthearted.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like we had Ghostbusters, it was all women. You remember Ocean's 11, they came out with Ocean's 8 or something like that. It had to be all women. Ray had to be this Mary Sue character where everything she did was perfect, and she learned it in a week. And basically Luke Skywalker was a disgruntled old guy who died and was angry and bitter. And you see these character developments that are just so it was a woman who wrote the script or who was in charge of the the storyline. She got fired because it wasn't true to the franchise the way the books were, and everyone did not support it. It didn't do well financially. So
And what was the name of the show?
The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi, yeah.
Well, someone on Riverdale should get fired. Now, let's have Ben, Don, or Albert weigh in.
I'm here.
I suppose none of you guys have time to watch Netflix.
I don't have time for Netflix right now.
Okay, so...
as far as talking about social appropriation, I see it all over the place. They're forcing their agenda down our throats, especially with children. One example is I actually had to call the superintendent of the school to ask. I saw an article about a school budget towards the end of the year. They had leftover money, which was, I think they had about $10,000 or $11,000, and they gave it to an organization called GLSEN, GLSEN, and I think it stands for Gay Lesbian Student Education Network, which their entire goal is to basically create more gay and trans kids to educate them.
Or at least identify them, you mean?
Right. And, that's not something that my tax dollars should be going to. It's not like I hate anybody, but I don't want my tax dollars going to some program like that. And if a school has extra money in their budget, why would they give it to a club, an exclusive club? It's literally an exclusive club that talks about inclusion, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they could have bought sports equipment or gym balls or uniforms.
Rolled it over for the next year.
Yeah. Yeah, just help everybody. You don't have to this group, that group.
Right. Their main message is to be tolerant and inclusive. and they're the least tolerant and inclusive group.
It's called Glisten, Don. GLISEN. It's through his local school district. They gave $10,000 to that.
What the hell did you do about it, Ben? That doesn't sound right.
I called our superintendent of our school. This didn't happen in our school district. The article that I read was from the Seattle area, and I talked to our superintendent about it. I said, is there any tax money going to a program like that here? Because that's when the safe space rainbow stickers were starting to be put on windows here and there in schools. And at the time I was coaching, and I noticed my daughter was about to go into this school, and I hadn't seen a rainbow safe space sticker on their elementary school, but I saw one in the middle school. So I called him to ask about that. I said, is this rainbow sticker part of a program that my tax dollars are going to? And I asked him about Glisten, and I told him about the money that was given to them in another school district, and he didn't know anything about it, but he looked into it, and he actually did research what the sticker meant, and he said, no, we're not paying for anything like that, and somebody took it upon themselves to put those stickers in there. That wasn't the school that did it. So one of the staff went around putting those stickers in. So that's what I did about it. I called and asked, and I made sure he knew that I noticed.
Good job.
Yeah.
Because
a lot
that's
of
not what
virtue
I'm sending
signaling.
my kids to. It's not what I'm sending my kids to school for. They can learn about social behavior after school. They need to learn how to read and write and do math and history. They don't need to learn about being gay, because that's not what I want to pay for.
That's why I believe in privatization, just let's not have big government programs so people can choose and people can get, like you go to a restaurant, right? Everybody wants to eat something different, so you have menus and you order what you want. You don't take a vote to decide what everybody's going to get. If we have choices, we don't have to fight about it.
Now, that depends on the restaurant. We've got Indian restaurants. You've got group eating restaurants now. You've got Basque. We here in Reno and in Nevada have a huge Basque population, and that's the way they eat in groups, where you order something and you put it in the middle of the table and everybody goes for it, and they don't have a choice.
I mean, if it's a group and you voluntarily decide you want to be a part of that group, and you are, then you have a choice, and you choose to be a part of that group, and people can cooperate. And, I'm not, free market and capitalism doesn't mean you can't have cooperation. But, the problem is when people are forced by threat and coercion to cooperate, and you better cooperate, or here's our guns, you better cooperate, then people aren't getting what they want, and then people have to fight over how resources are used, and that's where the problems are.
Yep, we don't have guns at the Basque restaurants around here.
Yep. That would be a whole other thing. That would ruin dining experience, wouldn't it?
One thing I've noticed about these kind of groups is the more they preach about tolerance and acceptance, the more they're hypocritical about it, because it seems like these groups have things in common. They all hate President Trump. I haven't seen one of these special groups that supports the president. They promote the feigned oppressionism, the false oppression. They're involved in a bigger story that I don't even know if they realize. This is part of the destruction of the family unit, and they're doing it. Whether they're doing it on purpose or not, they're doing it.
They're trying to expand the definition of individuals within the context of what their all likes and desires and sexuality is, and it's getting too complicated.
Exactly, and they're lying about it because they're using the word individual. They're trying to lie about it by catering to the individual, but then they're saying you can't be an individual, you have to join our group. basically. If you feel this way as an individual, then join our group. It doesn't make sense.
It's like I don't make.
That's what every group is, though. Proselytization. Every single group that I've been involved with, and that includes the ancillary parts of religion, things like that, proselytize. They almost get, and then once they get a hold of people, force them to become members and evolve with a brainwashing into whatever that group is. That's a normal thing. And there are some groups that just do it better than others, and that's what the fear is, for instance, with Muslims. The Muslims can take anybody, and after a certain time of proselytization and brainwashing, a lot of those people start agreeing with their postulates. And if anything else, Catholics, and organizations do it too when you become a union member. You get into a club or a group that is going to more or less proselytize their labor ideals on as many people as possible. And they lure them with the notion of more money, better benefits, yada, 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 but it's all part of brainwashing. So that's a normal part of any group, anywhere, in any part of the world.
I think John was John, right? I think you were talking more about the hypocrisy. Like there's a difference between being like, okay, our club is really awesome, you should join us. Things that you can. There's a lot of things I can't join, and there's a difference between hypocrisy. Like, I don't want to stereotype races like all those horrible white people do. Like, oh wait, you should see the irony in that. Like people will say you shouldn't stereotype and then stereotype. I think
exactly.
Is that more what you're talking about?
You didn't. And I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with people joining groups that they want to join. That's fine with me. But when it's tax dollars that pay for it, when tax dollars are being funneled into these special groups that are exclusive and they're using inclusive keywords, I don't want to pay for that hypocrisy. That's not my responsibility to pay for. I can pay for the roads, I can pay for the buses, for the teachers, but I'm not going to pay for that crap that I don't agree with.
Yeah, that's a good point you made too, is like there's people who talk about inclusivity and yet push exclusivity. Like, oh, we want to have inclusivity, we want to be inclusive, so let's have like a women-only lounge. It's like, okay, no, that's exclusive. That's not inclusive. But they don't get it. That's the social justice kind of thing, right? Yeah, I mean, inclusive is like Disneyland. Everybody goes, right? And you could be anything. You're welcome.
And that's what I'm kind of alluding to when I was talking about popularization and brainwashing.
Okay, yeah.
I just took it to the next level, the ultimate level.
Yeah.
Where it becomes membership almost cult-like, or once they get you in there, and just like that inclusivity and exclusivity, that's when you get into the inner circle, that's only inclusive, and anything that goes exclusive or vice versa is exclusive, and the mission statement of inclusion is hypocritical.
Yeah, and there's a difference too between like if it's something you can become versus something you're not. I mean, I won't blame a Muslim for thinking I'm less of a person for not being a Muslim. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're Muslims. They think it's the best thing. It makes sense, right? And I could choose to be a Muslim, so they're judging me based on a choice I make. But that's different from like saying I'm less of a person for being a man, being a male instead of female. It's like, well, I can't. Well, actually, maybe I could choose. But, I didn't have a choice. I have a choice as to whether I'm Muslim or not. I don't have a choice as to whether I'm Caucasian, whether I was born in the U.S., whether I'm a male or not.
And one other thing that that I was thinking about this week was Kennedy. I don't know exactly what he did. I'll have to research it more, but he used the unions. He made a change to the workers' unions, which actually helped him be elected. But now I kind of feel bad for people that are in unions, especially if they don't agree with Democrat politics, because they have a choice to get a different job, but if they wanted to go into a union and they don't agree with Democrat politics, they're paying for it anyway. And a lot of the teachers are pretty much forced into thinking a certain way. They're forced into thinking that being a Democrat is the only way they're going to keep their job. And so a lot of them are subverted into it. And it's not just the teachers' unions, but I think the teachers' union is the most dangerous one because they're the ones subverting our kids the way they think. And I think that's wrong to have a political union as a public service, because union money doesn't go to Republicans. It goes to Democrats.
Yeah, I believe that unions can...
That's not true here in Nevada. We've got our union membership, total union membership in Nevada. We've got about 60% Republican, 35% Democrat, and 5% other, 10% other, 30 to 35. So that type of union comparison doesn't necessarily hold for Nevada, but the rest of the country, it's generally like that.
Yeah, California. I believe that unions should exist, but I think the government should stay out. And well, Arizona is a right-to-work state, so I think that's awesome. It's like, you're not expected to join a union, and that obligation to join, to be able to work, and the regulation of it, that's the problem. Most of the jobs I've had where there hasn't been a union, they've treated us better, because, and my theory is that's because they don't want us to have a union, so the threat of people unionizing keeps the company in check better than having a union.
Well, the union creates a divide between the employer and the workers, because between the employer and the workers, there's union stewards, and basically the union is a separate organization from such as Boeing, like where Boeing or other companies like that, they can't just walk around and fire somebody who's completely worthless. They have to. It makes it so hard for them to fire somebody who's wasting their time and money, because the union stands in the way of that.
And I think that's because of the regulations and I think the government involvement. What union started as and what it should be is that the workers own the union, that the union is the workers. They represent them. They are obedient to the workers, not a separate thing. And I think that's what happened, regulation. And then you have, like in LA Unified, all the teachers have to get paid the same, and we have to pretend like there's no difference, like we're all equal. No, we're not. Teachers are not all created equal, and like they shouldn't have to go through all these hoops to get rid of a bad teacher.
Right. They have these closed-door meetings between the union lawyers and the executives, and they basically make these changes to policies, and they're both against the workers. Basically, they're having the lawyers and the executives, they can meet and make decisions for the workers, and the workers are just left paying for it all.
Yeah, the workers don't control the union.
Yeah, here's an example of something that happened. They had a vote about a policy change in Boeing, and the first round of voting, they voted it down. All the workers voted it down because part of the change was losing the pension, and a lot of people had so much money built into their pensions. they just couldn't justify getting rid of the pension from then forward. So the older employees all voted no. And so it didn't pass the first time, but they had another vote. And before the second vote, they went on a hiring spree. They hired like 1,100 people, I think, and they gave them all a sign-on bonus of $10,000. And then they had another vote, and it voted yes. So that is dirty politics. When the employees that you have vote no on something, and then you hire enough people to swing the vote and give them incentives to vote, and then you take a revote, that's dirty politics.
Yeah.
Well, the African American community right now is at an all-time high in its popularity for Donald Trump. He has given the communities what we or they have been looking for. I've never been for want of money, so I haven't been in that necessarily same boat. But the African American communities, the Latino communities, women are making more money than ever right now, and that is something that there's a 25 to 28% African American voter approval rating for Donald Trump right now, and it's probably going to climb. Trump's approval rating is now about 45%, and it's expected to climb. So whatever's happening in America, there is a good probability that Trump may win another term, and we're going to have to just abide by what he says. I have no problem with it because, as I said, there's a saying that I kind of believe in is that if you burn this bitch down, if you want to rebuild, just burn it down. And there's not, blacks and Hispanics really don't have much to lose.
Yeah.
And the unions, everybody knows the unions were developed to stop blacks from entering the workforce. That's the reason unions were developed in the first place. So we're going to have a real problem.
That's not necessarily true. There was a lot of it had to do with the way the Italian mafia was running things, and the Irish wanted their own form of power. So
yeah, but
a lot of the beginning was to fight back against mafia.
Yeah, but that was to fight the blacks or to
it didn't have anything to do with black people.
Okay, you might want to take a look, but from one of the main primary reasons, the same thing with Planned Parenthood. The main reason it was developed was to stop black population increases.
So, I've heard that.
Margaret Sanger.
Yeah, well, these are all things that are, no matter what percentage that we might determine that it was to stop blacks, it was the unions from getting in the workforce. It was to stop blacks. The Italian mob hated black people. They were Nazi Adolf Hitlers against black people in their rhetoric back in the teens, 20s, and 30s, especially the 20s and 30s, because they were developing their own national identity. And so, this is something that, they don't want to acknowledge that they have black blood in them. And that's something that a lot of countries, a lot of cultures, that's the last thing they want to admit. But in all actuality, of course, everyone knows that everybody has black blood in them. But
we're all mixed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is something that I can't, and I hate to continue to harp on the white enlightenment, but that is the gist, and I've been saying that from day one on this program. That is the gist of everything, not gender equality, because women still are not considered equal, and not any other kind of sexual or gender sexual preference or part of it is religious preference, but basically it's racial divide, and that's what we're fighting today. We'll be fighting tomorrow, and we'll be fighting by the year 3050 if we're still around.
What way are women not equal?
Oh, women are nowhere near equal. They don't have the Equal Rights Amendment. They have no constitutional bearing.
I think the Equal Rights Amendment would help men better now. It would, there's so many policies they'd have to get rid of. I saw a video of a guy that's going after schools for breaking Title IX, discriminating against men, and it's there's more Title IX problems. There's more people breaking that rule now. That's helping guys because there's all these colleges virtue signaling. Oh, we're going to do this thing just for women, and no, you're getting government funding. You help everybody.
Yeah, there's no
I have
such
a question.
Thing as making more equal. There's no such thing.
I was wondering, we were talking about race too, and now there's the black support for Trump is higher, and it's it's pretty interesting that on the Republican platform he's getting more minorities. One of the things, my perspective on it is I think a lot of white Democrat guys kind of virtue signal oh, we're concerned about the blacks and we care about them and we want to do this and go on about how they're mistreated and I'm do black people, are they asking for your help? To me it seems condescending, and a lot of Republicans I think see it the same way. It's who are we to be the saviors of the black people? And there's not, and the Democrats will accuse the Republicans of being racist, but I know a lot of people I talk to on the right, it's they just don't want to separate people so much. They don't care. There's the human race. Who cares? I know there are different races, but the idea of if government should just help things that help people that need help, and not this condescending idea of well, we're going to do this for this group and that for this group, and no, just help people. Right.
I think one of the biggest disservices that our government does is Bureau with their inaccurate numbers. They create fake minorities by giving wrong numbers. They group certain people together that might not want to be grouped together, and then they single out others. So their numbers might be, the math might be accurate, but the way they got their numbers is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Caucasian doesn't make sense. Just because somebody's skin looks white enough to be related to somebody else doesn't mean that those two people want anything to do with each other as far as being labeled the same thing. Yeah. Look how many white Mexicans there are. Why do we make things arbitrary? A lot of Middle Eastern Muslims are white. Why do we have these weird, we separate things that don't necessarily go that way, right? The world's and not... To split a family, basically, because a lot of these forms that you're required to sign, you have to check a box. And if you're half and half between black and Hispanic, they make you choose one or the other to fill out the form correctly. You have to choose one or the form's not complete. So the way that the Census Bureau forces people into this and their numbers, I don't know why they even exist. The Census Bureau is not doing a good job, and we shouldn't even have to pay for that.
Again, there's white entitlement. What happens is that the Census Bureau is simply doing a service, if you will, public service, for the politicians and the government so that they can start whatever changes they need for gerrymandering the districts.
Not necessarily. It doesn't benefit white people, because the way the census builds the groups, it builds white as the biggest group, meaning the fake white group is the majority, and all these other special groups get special treatment because they're created to be minorities.
But
you see what I'm saying?
But that's what the whites
It does not benefit white people to do that.
Sure it does. Because they want to give up the paltry part of their income in taxes and other kinds of funding to keep those other people, as you call them, on social welfare and on social programs. They want to denigrate those people so that they can have an opportunity to remain in power. That's their...
I don't. This sounds like the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I'm talking about everybody. Everybody white is willing to lay down a little bit of their income, almost like a tithe, in order to keep those people that they don't want, minorities, women, gays, whatever, down. They want to keep
all white people.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Okay, so you know what? You can read the mind of every single white person in the planet.
I'm almost as white as you are. I've dealt with white people all my life, and
but you read my mind. I want that. I don't want that.
Well, I mean, first of all, you must because you're paying for it. You're being an accessory. Because that's what's happening all around you. All those old white men are just salivating at the fact that they've made an extra 15% on their tax reform from the tax reform, and now they're going to have an opportunity to put that extra 8% into oppressive measures that will keep minorities, again, are still oppressed.
And I don't have a choice where my taxes
go. Because I'm forced to support. Yeah, because I'm forced to support something means I want it. How are you reading my mind? I want to have. I'm libertarian. I want no taxes. I want people to be in strong, well-knit communities where they support each other, and have a world where we don't need welfare.
Well, you need to speak up with your life then, because what's happening is that, and we are slowly going into that financial conundrum, if you will, but we've got 6% of the 1% own 96% of everything.
That's so Bernie Sanders of you.
So am I one of those?
Those numbers. The bottom line is that I don't necessarily want income distribution or redistribution to socialism. I just want a fair distribution rate, period. And when you bring when somebody's making 80% of a total of 100% of everything, and that 20% is going out in outlays, including taxes, and they don't have to answer to anyone, or they have the ability to get their kids out of trouble, or I'm talking about illegal things. I'm not talking about buying a yacht or an ostrich coat, but I'm just saying that it gives them that extra license to do things that are not necessarily Republic-minded. And I won't Republic-minded.
Go ahead, Wade. I'm in the 10% of seniors who wants to go to bed.
A moment ago, we were talking about all white people want something. It's like, well, no, I don't want that. All right, so, if you're talking about the elite, select elite, the people that want to stay in power, I'm not part of that. There's plenty of us that aren't.
Right.
And
when talking about white people, the spectrum is lost. The big white group, there's actually a spectrum that's completely lost, and it's because of the census and because it's such a habit to say white people. But you would actually create more of a minority for yourself. If you're interested in hearing people's heritage, then everybody's a minority. Like me, I would be a smaller group of people if people actually knew where my ancestors came from. like
right.
Irish, Italian, and Scottish. If that was on this census, if everybody had to accurately describe where their parents came from, there wouldn't be one big group. There'd be a bunch of splinter groups, and nobody would be a minority or a majority.
And that's.
I just found out this week that Finland is not considered part of Scandinavia. Only Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
So anyone who'd be in favor of getting rid of the Census Bureau, how about say aye? Aye.
ICE. Getting rid of ICE. ICE. Getting rid of ICE. Yes. ICE.
No, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on the whole ICE thing. But somebody, you need to do the correct protection of the borders, and not just like harassing somebody that came over on the airplane and just because you don't know what hotel they're staying at. There's a lot of problems with immigration. True.
Well, it's when I throw everybody in one bucket or so, it's more or less for a reason to promote dialogue. I know that there are exceptions to every rule, and there are some people who are of a libertarian or a other mind, if you will, and I'm just basically stating a position, general facts that I would. That I'm looking to have additional explanation or to expound on whatever that particular subject and bring it into a general context. So that's what I do when I make generalizations and blanket statements. But of course, there are people who are looking at it pragmatically, and like Ben says, I've always qualified race and cultures and American tendencies to those who immigrated after 1930 and those who were here before 1930. So those are two distinctions that I always make, but whenever I go too far in my
sure. And people have to think, too, everybody, as you go back in time, okay, I've got two parents, I've had 4 grandparents, and 16 great-grandparents. So you keep going back in time, you get more and more people. You go back far enough, you've got like an ancestor from every walk of life. So, so like you probably have like an ancestor that was a slave, and ancestors that were slave owners. You have probably all of them because we've got a lot of ancestors when we go back far enough.
There's different reasons why people generalize. People generalize out of laziness. They generalize to save time. They can it's a thing everybody does, but it's become too mainstream to be able to generalize people. I guess here's an example. Say people moved here from Kenya or Ethiopia, and as soon as they get here, they fall into a category of just black. They'd probably be upset being just labeled as black like everybody else that's black, because they're proud of their heritage where they came from.
That's the
problem. That's the problem I have with the census.
When they're called,
I work with 3 Ethiopians, and some of them are super light-skinned.
Yeah.
Well, they still get contentious. Some of them when you call them African American, because they'll go around and say I'm an Ethiopian American, or I'm a Sudanese American. They'll the ones here anyway, and generally will make that distinction for you.
And it all goes back to brainwashing the public to make them believe that they're less important than they are.
Yeah. If we get rid of our phony divides, I mean, that's the thing, too, because we're not on separate sides here. And, we need to break these divisions and go against the people that are trying to manipulate and control everyone and, get the real enemies. Let me compare it with Islam, and Muslim immigration. That, I'm not a believer in casting all Muslims as terrorists. I do feel like Islamic terrorism is a problem, but we need to reach out and work together and team up with the Muslims, which is most of them, who are not like that, and we need their support. So together we can fight the Muslims that are the theocrats, the violent militant theocrats.
I'll say what I've said before. America's for only two different kinds of people, Americans and visitors.
That's kind of how Korea does it. There's like two races. Yeah. Sorry.
I like 4 points, Ben.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Don. You're in charge of closing the show out.
All right.
Okay?
That's no problem. I haven't heard
Okay,
from
good night,
Albert
you guys. I'm tired.
All right, good night, Jane.
Good night, Jane.
Good night.
Thank you. We're not going to be. I'm tired too. I've been working my butt off out in the streets all day with the smoke getting in my nose and my lungs. It's been crazy down here working in Nevada and California with all these forest fires, and so it has been a very, very long week for us. It doesn't look like it's going to clear up. Most of these fires are only if 50% contained. That's a good thing. So we've had a very, very tough time in Nevada and California the last couple weeks, and it doesn't look like it's going to be letting up anytime soon. And I know that the East Coast has been getting rain for 6 days now and counting. So there's going to be a lot of flooding and a lot of people moving out here to Washington with you, Ben. So it's going to be
we're kind of full.
Yeah, no, you guys are kind of full. But they're going to have to take some of that corn field out in the middle of the middle of the state and make it into nice big urban areas, because they're going to be people from all over the country. Atlanta looks like it might flood. Some of it, there was a potential breach of a levee dam in Massachusetts that's getting ready to go. I think Lewiston or something like that. In some parts of New York State, by Albany, and those are under flood watch. So we're going to be looking at people who are tired of rebuilding over and over and over. Some of these folks have been in Tennessee are on their third rebuild. Some of the people in Missouri and Oklahoma are on their third tornado rebuild. And I don't see where they can take too much more without finally realizing that the only place to live in the country is out west. So we'll have to absorb them. California, John down there, and so Santa Monica is going to get some renters who are going to rip him off again, and he's going to be bad. And I'll be looking at the fact that we here in Nevada again are the third fastest growing state in the country, and Reno is the second fastest growing retirement community in the country. Not to mention the fifth fastest industrial growth, fourth and fifth fastest industrial growing area in the country. And then you're going to have to watch one of your islands fall because too many people are standing on it. So we'll just have to get ready for this influx of new migrants from all over the country. Make sure they have their green card. But, anything else? Wait, I didn't say hi to
my
you,
brother.
Anyway. Hi, Wade.
Hey. All right. Yeah, Nevada's pretty cool. I like it.
What were you going to say, Ben?
I was going to say my brother is fighting fire now. He's on an elite crew of firefighters. He was hand-selected because he's so good at it. He just, most of his life he's been in prison ever since high school. And he could tell you a lot about the justice system from the inside. But he was never a bad person. He just got caught doing stupid things over and over. And once you build a file on yourself like that, and you go to, if you make a mistake, they see your file and all your history, and it's so easy for them to throw you back in. And I never gave up on him, but I kind of figured that he would spend the rest of his life in jail, because it seemed like he would get out for a little while and give me a call or something, and then something would happen, he'd be back in there. But this last time, he came out with a completely different view, and he said, "I'm done with being stupid. I'm going to be a firefighter." And you know, even his dad was like, "Okay, I'll believe it when I see it." But he did. He got on with a fire crew and worked his ass off, and the owner of a private fire company watched how he was working and selected him to be on a special firefighting team to travel the country. And he's been making crazy money and loves what he's doing now.
Nice.
So
I've done about the same thing, and it's fantastic to know that you are wanted, that you are a special selection of, in this, you know, I don't know if he was a hot shot or not, but when you even if
his crew goes in before the hot shots usually.
Okay, wow. That's when the fire first starts, and that is more or less the definition of the hot shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he basically is. He's a monster now. He's bulked up. He's a meathead now. This must be some hard work.
Oh,
serving a good purpose.
You have because there are times where you're going to have to hike damn near 24 hours. If you're either going into a fire, but primarily getting away from a fire. If you have to get up and start moving away from a fire that's coming to you, because one of the main things is that if you can't do anything about it, you get the hell out. You let it burn. And so there are times where fires are coming, especially if you're on top of a hill and the fire is coming up that hill, that fire is going to come up the hill. So you've got to get out of there as quickly as possible. You never rely on your protection. And you just make sure that you go to a safe area until the fire's burned. You can set back fires or do whatever it takes to chop a line, but you are definitely in a possible. There's a definite possibility that you can march out of a place anywhere from 5 to 15 hours to get away from it if you're in a gully or if you're in a place that you're coming up to fire on all sides. You've got to get out of a place. And so you have to be bulked up, you have to be ready, you have to be fit in order to get out of there with all that gear, because you're carrying a minimum of 50 pounds of gear. And that's on your back. So you've got to get, if you're talking about your sprayer and everything else, your retardant tents, all your tools, you've got to be able to get that stuff out of there. And there's one rule: you don't run. So that means that you just have to march quickly, as far and as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, he's not afraid to save someone's life. They probably realize that about him right away. He would not freeze up in danger. He would totally jump in and save somebody's life. And he's always been that way. But
and that's what I was talking about. It's comparable to journalists. What I was talking about earlier, where we were talking about the subject of the journalists going into a place under the auspices of a nonprofit and, ended up getting killed, but they would have done it again. Same thing with a fire jumper. You're going to, if you see a fire and you've been trained for that, you're not going to run away like everybody else. You're going to go into the fire and try to see what you can contain, if there's anything you can chop down in order to stop the progression of fire's growth. You're going to do anything that's possible to save structures, if possible, but specifically to save life. Right. But kudos to your brother, man, because there are a lot of people, I've seen them, that do come out of prison with a new lease on life, and given the opportunity, they'll be as loyal and productive as anybody, period.
Or more.
People, yeah, well,
he hasn't known his passion.
Right. And he's essentially got a new life. And you got to give him all the credit in the world, because it was the catalyst. He found his catalyst. People are exposed to everything or a lot of things throughout their lives, and without necessarily finding the optimum career or a situation for themselves. Your brother obviously found it, and he is enjoying it to the fullest, and he will probably maintain that job for all of his life.
Right. And he does have a plan. He's going to do this for a long time because he likes it, but eventually he wants to get into engineering, fire engineering aspects, and he's probably going to make some killer money later.
Right.
And they'll pay for his school. So.
Now, is Albert still on? Or did he go?
I think he's
gone.
This is the Trump administration. You can't make America great only yourself. LeBron James rules.
What?
That was a message from our sponsor. Let me repeat it.
This is the Trump administration. You can't make America great only yourself. LeBron James rules.
Sorry.
Okay.
You can't make America great, only yourself?
Yeah.
Only yourself, LeBron James
Okay.
rules.
Then I wrote LeBron James rules. Are you guys finishing up?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I'm done.
Go ahead.
Because the reason why is because I don't want the show to keep going after I go to bed. Then it would make a big gap.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anybody want to go? I can go.
You guys can do your conclusions.
Right. All right, and mine. I kind of said it earlier, but I've had a lot of experience in the white world, and I've tried
the white world or the light world?
The white man's world. The white man's world and the white woman's world. I've had
thanks for giving me the world.
Yeah,
I'm glad
I've
to own a world. Thank you.
Going to other countries and observing the cultures firsthand. Sitting at the tables with them, going shopping with them, making love with them, with the ladies, and doing all kinds of other things. And as I said, the one thing that I don't understand is the motto of the white man, and which is, if I can't have it, nobody can. That has always stuck with me as a destructive motto, and that's one of the reasons that I have a problem with discounting white privilege, because it's something that white they don't understand. So I'm trying my best to make sure that they at least are conscious of it when it happens. So that's one of the reasons this is an addendum to what I was saying earlier. That's one of the reasons that I want to make sure that if I do say something and I do interject generalities or umbrella statements, that they're not really umbrella statements per se from me. I know that they are, but I don't necessarily want to understate the obvious, which is we have a disparity here in America. It started constitutionally where 3/5 of all minorities, besides white men, and that included pretty much white women, are humans. And when people start talking about the Constitution and all that bullshit, they're discrediting the minorities that built America, and that they're not 3/5 of a human; they're a full human, and that's something that Constitutional Convention, or at least a forum or something that would come out and say that everybody is human might be necessary at some point in the future to clarify that everybody.
Try to condense it a little.
I'm done.
Okay, women were counted as nothing. Go ahead, Wade.
Yeah, I can respond. Absolutely, yes. And I think it's good, to recognize that there are distinctions and people are all different. And the whole thing with the 3/5 compromise, it was just ridiculous, the things that were tolerated by of racists that were tolerated. That a lot of the leaders in the southern states, the powerful, rich slave owners, they wanted when it was to their benefit, they wanted to count their slaves for representation, but they didn't want their slaves to count for taxation. And these guys back then were just ridiculously demanding, and nobody is 3/5 of a person. You are fully human. Every race, every person of every race and every gender, we are all fully human. Nobody likes what those Confederate guys were doing back then, except for like some really racist people. But I don't know why. I don't know why Andrew Jackson's left off the hook, who pushed the Trail of Tears. He was pretty racist. So let's focus on the problems and address them. And I think if we don't have to vote and be so collective, we can get along better. And I think you won't have such a disparity between rich and poor if you cut a lot of the red tape and hoops that keep the competition out of the way of the people in power. I'll keep it short. That's good. Next.
Thank you. Everybody. Go ahead, Ben or Albert or John.
Well, yeah, it's a different world than it was back then. Of course, they were building a country, so they had to think about it quickly. But we have had a long time to study what they came up with, and make changes here and there. So, of course, I appreciate what we have now, because the original, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution makes a lot of sense. It's basically putting in place inalienable rights and giving us a legal status to be able to have our freedom of speech and defend ourselves and be secure in our belongings and our property. That's basically what anybody could ever want. So I'm glad we have it, and I'm glad it's equal now.
I'll concur with that. I agree with the fundamentals of the issues you just brought up, but I heard an advertisement today. Tim Walz is running for governor in Minnesota, and his running mate is a female Native American, and she said her family was one generation removed of forced Catholic education and separation of kids from their parents. Not in a negative way, not like the border stuff. But what she was trying to concur is that she said that 40% of Americans didn't even know that Native Americans still exist. I find that a little hard to believe. But basically, if you study any part of the Native American culture, every element of their earthly existence had a meaning, whether it was a herb or an animal or like changing of the seasons. And the only reason I'm tying that in is I am thankful for property rights and individuality, but I'm not really advertising diversity. I'm just trying to say that we all have to take one step further and kind of embrace each other, because we don't always know exactly where our differences stem from. Just like John and my difference this morning on the phone, where I had to reach out and call a different radio member. So I'm glad everybody called in tonight. I was actually nervous because I thought it was going to be only Don and I plus part of Wade. But thank you all for calling in. And does Albert or John have any final thoughts?
Well, I would say that America is a wonderful place, and we all have to look at where we're at compared to where we've been. And if you look at the world the way it was when the country was founded, basically the whole world was, the great majority of the world was practicing slavery. Muslims were selling actually black on the market, and actually Egypt was very, well known for enslaving the Jews. So it's a worldwide institution that's been around a long time. White people did end it. It wasn't, minorities that voted it in, although the pressure was for minorities. So we have to kind of look at the whole history. Are we correcting things? Are we growing? And work with the now. We can go back in the past, but why would we live other people's problems? We want to move forward. And the greatest prosperity has been into our country through capitalism. The whole world, we live at a lifestyle that is above any other culture, kings or middle class ever. So
that's a good point at the end. I'm thankful to be fed every day and to have a good income.